The room was unbearably humid, even with the fans going. The smell of incense was way too strong, and I didn't know half of the people in the room. I didn't like it, not one little bit. I have never been a religious person per se, but I have always gone to church and did my part by serving at the altar and singing in the choir. I had been on for 4 years now. It had been 2 years since my last communion, and I had never been to confession. I'm not a great Anglican, but an Anglican nonetheless. The light of the candles got brighter as I approached the smaller chapel in the church. The smell of incense so strong it made my eyes burn. I walked through the dark wooden arches into the seating area of the chapel. I sat down in the third row on the left side, removing the pillow and placing it on the floor before sitting down. I mean, who knew what kind of contamination it might have after being here for all of these years? I looked up and saw the ghastly flags hanging above my head. It represents our history, my grandmother always says, but I wasn't entirely comfortable with being confirmed below the old apartheid flag. More people started walking in. Family this time. My grandparents on my mother's side came in, followed by my godmother and her husband. My grandma sat next to me, whilst my grandpa sat a couple of seats back with my brother. Then in walked my great-aunt, and then finally my great-grandmother at the age of 87. Most of my family was there. We sat for a couple of minutes in silence, praying, worrying, wondering, what do we eat after the service? Who was winning the cricket? We all had different things in our minds, but what was on my mind? The weight of this commitment. Was I really ready to put my whole life in God's hands? What if I wanted to become Buddhist or even a pagan? Would this affect my life in such a manner that I could no longer be myself? All these questions were running through my mind a mile a minute. The bishop and the priest walked slowly, almost too slowly. I wanted to get this over with. I felt like I was going to cry. My grandma took my hand and whispered quietly in my ear, "Don't worry, it's all right, trust me." And I did. I looked ahead and realized that this was the right thing to do for my and my family's sake. We started the service with the Our Father. It reminded me greatly of when I was little and went to church every single Sunday. I knew almost every hymn and prayer by heart, all the creeds and all the psalms. Then the bishop held his sermon. I usually hate them, believing it's just another way for priests and pastors to keep you at church longer. But Bishop Bethlehem is a special person, and his sermons are always the best. Witty, sometimes too silly, but you get the point and you remember it for months and months afterwards. The sermon written for my confirmation was about family and having your own personal space bubble, about trusting God to help you to realize your intrusive ways and to forgive and forget rather than to hold a grudge. It spoke wonders to me and helped me to see my faults. It brought on a light feeling in my heart, a feeling I would describe as peace, a good realization of what my life had been so far. There was definitely room for improvement, but who doesn't need to improve their lives just a little? Afterwards, we had communion, and then Father called me up. The bishop asked me to kneel in front of him. I did so. He took a cup with holy water and oil and lemon. He put them together and put the sign of the cross on my forehead. This was to represent my new purification as a Christian, as an Anglican. I felt free. I felt like I was a big part of something, a part of something bigger than life, something special and important.